Yeah, so hello everybody. I'm going to talk a little bit about Git, but let me shortly introduce myself first. So, um, so you don't see me two times. So yeah, my name is Sebastian. I'm from Germany. I work at a company called Check24. It's quite a big company. We're one of the biggest PHP employers in Germany. I'm doing programming for roughly 30 years now. So that is kind of a hint that I'm a little bit older. I didn't start programming with 3 or 4 years. So yeah, in my free time, I'm doing a lot of open source stuff. Just contributing to other stuff, but I'm also managing 1 or 2 projects of my own. And I, just as everybody else, I'm saying stupid stuff on the internet. So if you care, you can follow along on Twitter and see what's going on there. So we are here to talk about Git. And often when I see like Git repositories at new teams, I see stuff like this. And I'm this is giving me the creeps. It doesn't feel right seeing commit messages like this, because it's basically telling me nothing. And I really like the Git history to kind of tell me what is happening in my software. So the first thing I basically always talk about when I talk about Git are Git commit messages. And I'm not sure if you're aware, but there's this wonderful website, whatthecommit.com. And whenever you're struggling to find the perfect commit message, just go to whatthecommit.com and you will get some gems like major fix up, fixed or one that does not simply merge into master, and my favorite, best commit ever. Of course, that's not very helpful either. So master Uguay has some rules for commit messages. So master Uguay says separate the subject from body with a blank line. And that's where I most of the time see people looking at me funny and say subject, body. My commit messages are like 3 words. Isn't that enough? No, most of the time it's not. And we will see examples in a second. So the second rule is limit the subject line to 50 characters. Also, we see some reasons why in a second. Some a little bit more arbitrary, and do not end the subject line with a period. Since we limit ourselves to 50 characters, wasting a character for a period, just don't do it. Another one is capitalize the subject line. And that's just basically me. Like, I hate it looking at a Git history and seeing lowercase, lowercase, uppercase, lowercase, uppercase. That kind of freaks me out, but I'm special in that sense. Then again, something that's a little bit more important, that's use the imperative mood for the subject line. And I'll again explain in a second what that means. And wrap the body at 72 characters. That's basically for old people like me that work on the terminal and love their 72 character limit. And use the body to explain what and why, and not how you did something. Because how you did something, that is hopefully explained by the code. But the decision why you actually decided to change it and that's the important information in the commit message. So let's start with the subject line. So when we do our commit message and we actually exceed 50 characters, you will end up with stuff like this. Most like IDEs or GUIs are cutting off the commit message after roughly 50, 60 characters. And what I see most of the time happening is then if you have like some basic stuff, and then when the Git commit message gets interesting, then it suddenly gets cut off. So you have to click and have to actually explore and see what's behind that. So try to be very precise and short, so everybody can see at a first glance what's really happening there. Then there was a rule that we should use the imperative mood for our commit messages. And the thing is, Git does the same thing. So if Git is suggesting any commit messages to you, it basically is suggesting commit messages in the imperative mood. And the rule here is try to complete the sentence, if applied, this commit will, and then your commit message. So let's look at some examples. So this commit will fixed bug. So that doesn't work, right? Some good examples would be this commit message will merge branch feature X. So that's basically a commit message that that Git will suggest to you. This commit message will update the getting started documentation. This commit will remove all deprecated methods, and so on and so on. So good commit messages should or could look like this. Like the 50 character subject, then a blank line, and then the body wrapped at 72 characters. And of course, in the body, you don't have to worry about the imperative mood anymore. You can write however you want. And sure, not every commit will look like this, but especially if you maybe squash commits and do if you merge feature branches and you squash like 20 commits together during the merge, then it maybe makes sense to actually have some more descriptive commit message that looks actually something like this. So, and those commit messages will actually help you because you can easily search the log for information, for issues, for issue numbers, and all that kind of stuff. So putting some effort in your commit messages really helps. Okay, so Git messages out of the way. Let's talk about some tips and tricks that kind of helped me with my Git usage. So quite a while ago, I fixed my mistakes like this. Go out the directory, remove the directory, and clone my repository again. And sometimes that was pretty painful. And nowadays I don't have to do that anymore because I kind of discovered the Revlog. So the Revlog is really cool. You just type Git Revlog, and it will show you a history of your repository, and it will even remember states in between rebases, before the rebase, during the rebase, and after rebase. So normally, if you do a rebase and you mess up, you maybe lost some commits. That's really painful. But with the Git Revlog, you can even restore those commits and go back to a state before a rebase or something like that. That's whenever you are ending up in a state in your repository and you're not sure what's happening and are kind of stuck, then you can use the Git Revlog to just get to a position where everything was still working. So let's say we want to go to this fixed typo commit, so the amended one. All we have to do then is we have to type git reset, and use this same identifier that was in the Revlog, and immediately our repository will be in that state. So whenever you mess up, just look at the Revlog, pick the position you want to go to, and then you're back at that point in time in your repository. It's quite nice. Another thing are multiple work trees. Let's say you're working on a feature and you have your feature branch and you have like 20 changed files, and somebody comes to you and says, yeah, can you do a bug fix on this? And you can, yeah, sure. But I have to switch branches, and then you have to commit those changes, or you have to stash them, and whatever you choose, you have to restore them from the stash or clean up the commits afterwards because they weren't ready. But there's another solution. What you can do is you can actually create a second working directory. So you don't have to completely clone your repository. You can just say, I want a new working directory where I can work in and work on different branches. So you can use Git worktree, and you specify the path where the files should be checked out to. And then you can go there and do everything as usual. Change files, commit them to the repository, and switch branches and whatever you want. You can use Git worktree list to actually show the active work trees that you have. And if you are finished and you're removing the directory again, Git will automatically clean up the work tree. So if it recognizes, okay, that work tree is gone, it will automatically remove it. And if you want to do it manually, you can run Git worktree prune, and then you're back to one work tree again. The thing is, if you, for example, have a laptop with a limited hard drive and you want to check out something to an external hard drive or a network drive, if that drive isn't available, your Git will always clean up the working directory. And if you don't want that, you can actually pin and lock the work tree. So you define the work tree on the network drive. And so now it's you have two. And then you can actually say you want to lock that working directory. And even if the drive isn't available and Git can't find it, it will not prune it and will not get rid of it. And if you're done, then you can just unlock it again and get rid of it if it recognizes that it's not there anymore. So that's quite nice. And like I said, you can have like 1, 2, 3, 5 working directories and have like 5 branches checked out simultaneously. It's working fine. It's pretty cool. Another thing is the global Gitignor file. And what I used to do was I was adding my PHP Storm files to every Gitignor file. Every project I had to add the PHP Storm files, and maybe some other local files that I always have in my project directories. And then somebody told me, so you shouldn't do that because not everybody is using PHP Storm, and why would we put that in the project or in the project Gitignor file? If that's just for you, just use a private Gitignor file and use that. And what we have to do is, you can create a Gitignor file, maybe in your home directory. I use .gitignor in my home directory. And then we have to tell Git that it has to use this global Gitignor file. And then we can add like PHP Storm files to that file, and Git will never complain about Git or PHP Storm files in your repositories anymore, because it uses that file now. So if we look at it, it looks something like this. You can also edit it manually if you want to. Then you don't have to put the same Gitignors in every project anymore. It's quite nice. So let's say you're you're working on a project and everything is awesome. You're pumping out features and everything is cool. You're loving it, and suddenly there's a bug, right? So, and it's a horrible production bug, right? And you messed up stuff for some customers, and of course you're going to fix it. It takes you a couple of minutes maybe, and then you have a fix out and everything's fine, and you think you can relax again, but then the business people come with a crazy question and say, okay, we need to know since when this bug went live, because we did some not so good stuff for our customers, and we have to talk to them, but we don't want to talk to all of our customers. We really want to know which customers we have to talk to. So we have to know when this went live. Okay, cool. Let's do this, right? So the business is telling you that like 2 weeks ago, it was definitely working. So everything was fine 2 weeks ago. So, okay, what we are doing then is, since we know 2 weeks ago, everything was okay, we started to do a binary search, right? We go to the middle and say, okay, was it working here? And we check out the commits or the release version of that time, and then we run our tests and make sure if everything works, and then we see it didn't work then. Okay, so we have to go further back. So then we will check out this commit, and we will check that and run our tests, and it will tell us, okay, everything was okay. Awesome. So now we know we have like two options. It's either this one, the gray one, and if that works, and it does, then this one must be the point in time where we introduced the issue. So this is the point in time where we introduced the bug. And the only thing we have to do now is we have to kind of find out when we actually release that. So we have to check our deployment logs or something like that, and then find it out. But it's kind of it's a lot of work to actually do that. And the good thing is Git can actually do that for you, and it can do that with Git Bisect. So what Git Bisect wants from you is, first we have to tell Git that we want to start a bisect. So we run Git Bisect start, and then we have to tell Git a point in time where we had like the issue, and that's most of the time our current version. So the head version is not working, and then we have to tell Git, okay, like 2 weeks before it was okay, so we know it was working then. So we have to point Git to actually a good commit, and as soon as you did that, Git Bisect will run, and it will check out the commit in the middle, and it will roughly estimate how many checkouts it has to do, and then it asks you, okay, I've checked out the thing in the middle, please tell me, is it okay or is it not okay? And then you have to say, no, it's still bad. And again, Git automatically runs, checks out the commit in the middle, and is asking you again. And you say, no, still bad. And then it will roughly estimate. You can say, oh no, this one is good. And if you're finished and have like checked out everything you need, then Git will tell you, okay, this was actually the commit that introduced the issue. In this example, quite obvious because it made everything burn, right? But yeah, you don't have to worry about finding the right commits to check out. Git will take care of it completely. And then just run Git Bisect reset, and you will be at the same point as you started your bisect run. So normally you're back in at your head state. The cool thing about Git Bisect is that if you have automated tests, then it does everything for you, right? You don't even have to tell Git Bisect if something is good or bad. It will automatically check it. So how does that look like? the initial stuff is exactly the same, right? We start the bisection run. We tell Git that's good, that's bad. But then we say to actually find out if our system works, you can run our automated tests. And so we say Git Bisect run our test script, and then it will automatically check everything out, run the tests, and if the tests fail, it will mark the commit as bad, and if the tests work, it will mark the commit as good. And like you can go for a coffee, and when you return, it will present you with the result and will tell you exactly, okay, this was the commit that introduced the error, and the only thing you then have to do is to find out when you actually deployed that to production, and then you can reset it again and say, okay, I'm done. So hopefully those kind of questions aren't that stressful anymore. Next thing I want to talk about are Git hooks. And Git hooks are just like webhooks. Git is emitting some events internally, and if so some of those events get triggered, you can actually hook yourself into those events and execute stuff. And there are local hooks that are working in your local repository. For example, post checkout, commit message, pre-commit, and pre-push. There are some more, but those are the most obvious ones. And of course, there are some remote hooks as well. So when you push or pull from your remote repository, the remote is also emitting events and triggering hooks if there are any. But I want to focus on local hooks. And hooks are really cool to like improve your development workflow, but they have some issues. So for example, you cannot commit hooks to the repository. So hooks are located inside of your repository. They are, so your Git repository is in the .git directory, and there's a .git/hooks directory, and there are the actual hooks that get executed, but you cannot commit them to that directory. So whenever you clone a directory, you will not clone those scripts that are in that directory. And that's a security thing, because if you imagine that somebody could actually put scripts in your repository, that if you clone it, they would immediately run with your user permissions, that already sounds kind of scary. So it's a security thing that Git doesn't allow to actually clone Git hooks ready from during the clone. So what you have to do, you can of course commit your scripts that you want to execute to the repository, but every developer has to actually copy the scripts into their own local Git/hooks directory, or symlink them, or whatever. And that's, some of them do it, some of them don't do it. Maybe some of them might even not know about it. And then you have an issue if somebody is using Windows and somebody is using Linux, and you choose to write your Git hooks in Bash, then you already start getting some issues. And that's basically why I developed Captain Hook. And Captain Hook is a hook manager written in PHP. So what does this fella here actually do? The thing I wanted to achieve is, if you already have hooks that you are using, like Bash scripts or anything else, I wanted that they are easy to integrate into that stuff. Then what I wanted to achieve is that you can configure your hooks. You don't have to install like Bash scripts into some directory or symlink stuff. the idea was to actually have a configuration file, and that defines what kind of hooks will run during your Git events. And of course, the configuration should be shareable. If you commit it to the repository, everybody could use the same configuration. And the most important thing for me was that you could do whatever you want with it. So if you would think to do crazy stuff in your hooks, you should be able to do so. So how do you actually install it? So the preferred way, or how I do it, is by using 5. Hopefully you know 5. If not, it's basically the composer for far files. So if you're using PHP unit as a far file or PHP-CS as a far file, you can use 5 to install those far files. And even Composer is installable via 5. So whenever you want to install Composer, you can just type 5 install Composer, and then it will actually install Composer. But if you don't want to use 5, of course, you can also use Composer. Like just use Composer require --dev, and then install it using Composer. The 2 commands below are actually the Captain Hook configure command actually creates a configuration for you, and it will ask you some basic questions, and if you ask them, it will put the answers in your configuration file and change it accordingly. And what you have to do then is you have to run Captain Hook install, and what that will do, it will actually copy will install the hooks into your local hook directory, so your local.git/hooks directory, and that will actually activate the hooks so they really get executed. And if you don't want to do that all manually, then you can actually use the Composer plugin and install the Composer plugin, and it will run all automatically. It will just run a small wizard, and it will run the installer. And whenever you run Composer install, it will actually make sure that you install the hooks as well. So whenever one of your team members will run Composer install, it will actually download the Composer plugin and will install the Git hooks. So you don't have to worry about your teammates using different hooks, because it takes care of everything. That's quite nice. So as I mentioned, with Captain Hook configure, you are actually creating the configuration. So what's that configuration like? Basically, it's a JSON configuration, just like your composer.json. It's just called captainhook.json. So you can commit your hook configuration to the repository, and yeah, everybody from now on uses the same hooks all the time. So that's quite nice. So when we look at the configuration basically has a section for every hook. So we have commit message, pre-push, pre-commit, and some others. And there's a section for every hook in the configuration. And if we extend the section, we can actually see if the hooks are enabled or not. So you can disable all your hooks in the configuration if you want to. And then there's a list of actions that will run during this Git hook or this Git operation. And in this example, you see the beams action, and what that action will do is it will validate your commit messages and will make sure that you follow these 7 rules that I mentioned before for the commit messages. So it will check if you start with an uppercase letter, you don't have a period at the end, subject 50 characters, and so on and so on and so on. And if you want to tweak it, you can actually say, okay, no, I want my subject line to be 60 characters, and you can actually configure this if you want to. Then, for example, let's look at the pre-commit stuff. And here you can see normally you're using PHP classes that run as actions, but you also can use any shell script or binary. Like in this case, I'm running PHP-CS to actually check the coding standard, right? And make sure that before I commit, that every file is adhering to the PSR2 coding standard. And if that's not the case, the commit will fail. So if one of the action fails, it will actually prevent the commit from happening. It will actually say, no, you can't commit because something bad has happened. And if you just want to add something, for example, say, okay, I want to monitor my code coverage or my test coverage, and I want my test coverage to be at minimum like 75%, then just put in the action, and from now on, you will not be able to commit if your test coverage is going below 75%. So how does it look like after we installed it and configured some stuff? So let's say we want to commit something, maybe like this, and then the captain runs. And it will execute the pre-commit hooks, and in our case, the commit message hook, and it will validate the 7 rules. And then it will tell you that you made a mistake. In our case, we violated like 2 rules, or even 3. We started with a lowercase letter. We ended with a period, I think, and we have not used the imperative mood. We've used some updated version. That's not so nice. So you kind of make sure that people like think about their commit messages before they end up in the central repository. So yeah, just to make sure you get a nice and like informative Git history. The thing I already mentioned, that you can easily extend the Captain Hook with your own stuff. So there are actually 4 ways you can do that. You can run your own commit message rules. That's the most, I would say, the easiest way. You can create custom actions, custom conditions, and I will tell you what conditions are in a second. And you can go completely crazy and do Captain Hook plugins. So let's see how you can add your own commit message rules. Let's say you don't want people to yell in your commit messages. So not everything should be uppercase. So the only thing you have to do is you have to write a PHP class that implements the rule interface. And the rule interface dictates that you have to implement 2 methods: the pass method that will actually tell if the rule applies or it doesn't, and then the second one is the getHint method, and this just tells gives you the information what went wrong. So if the rule does not apply, then the getHint method is there to actually provide some information to the user what he did wrong. And in our case, it just tells the user that he shouldn't yell in commit messages. So how do we use it? When we surely have to configure it in our Captain Hook configuration. So we say we want to use some rules here. And then we say we want to use our do not yell rule. And that's basically all we have to do to make sure we don't have pure uppercase commit messages. And if you want to, you can basically use the rules that we talked about before, because the beams action is basically just a shorthand to a collection of those rules. So you can use every rule that's already included in Captain Hook. For example, the subject starts with an uppercase letter. You can just use the same rule in your configuration as well. The second way is to actually create actions. And this is the most powerful way. You can do crazy stuff with actions. Actions can be three things. It can be like just shell scripts or any other binary. You can like use any binary you already have. The second option is to use static methods. So if you have a PHP class that has a static method without any arguments, you can just execute that. You don't have to worry about interfaces and all that stuff. Just execute the static method. And the third one is to actually create your own action implementation. And just like with rules or commit message rules, you have to implement an interface. The interface in that case is the action interface. And that only requires you to implement one method, and that's the execute method. And let's say we want to write an action that makes sure we only put valid ticket IDs into our commit messages. So we don't want like deleted or invalid ticket IDs in our commit messages. So we go into the execute function. We ask the repository for the commit message, and then we actually get the full content of the commit message and provide it to our search method and say, okay, if there are any ticket IDs in there, make sure they are all valid, and if they are not, just throw an exception and say, no, that's not okay. Something bad is happening here. And if you want to set up that stuff in your configuration, just add the action, and that's basically all you have to do. And you can also pass like configuration options to your action. So you can do this with the options object inside the configuration. And this is just a key value thing. And if you want to access this stuff from inside your PHP action, you can just call action get option and use the key that you used in the configuration file, and you will have the value at hand and can use it in your PHP implementation. Then we had conditions. And conditions are quite nice because they make sure that you are able to execute specific actions only if specific conditions apply. Like you can, for example, you can say, I want to run my composer install, but I only want to run it if any file like the composer JSON or the composer log file has changed. And this is, as you can see, in a post merge hook. So whenever you run git pull or you merge a feature branch or anything like it, and in that merge, your composer JSON or composer log file get changed, it will immediately trigger a composer install. So we will never run a pull and like go to your browser and look at the site and it will crash because of some composer dependencies are not there, and you have to go, okay, yeah, I know I have to run composer install, and then hit F5 or Command R to actually reload the page, and then it works. No, that your Git hooks will take care of that. So you will never have to worry about running composer install on switching branches, merging stuff, rebasing or whatever. And of course, you can write your own conditions. You don't have to stick to the conditions that are included. And it's the same thing, just implement an interface, the condition interface, and that's basically one method if the condition is true or not. And for example, in this condition, we don't allow this to happen on Mondays. We don't want this action in our Git hooks to run on Mondays. Don't ask me why, just a stupid example. But that's basically what you are able to do with conditions. And again, how do you configure it? You just set up the conditions in your configuration and link to your own implementation, and then it already works. So that's yeah, quite nice. So the of course the captain has some favorite hooks that really help. And so some people really get totally crazy and they run a ton of scripts pre-commit before they commit stuff. And I'm not really a fan of that because I really want to commit fast. And so I only run checks on commit that are really, really fast. So I'm still able to like commit on a rapid pace. So I'm really only doing some linting. So if I didn't make any total basic errors, and maybe I want to check the coding style on the files I changed or I touched during this commit. And you can do this by using some placeholders like this. So this will replace the placeholder with only the PHP files that got changed during your commit. So it will not change, will not check your whole code base. It will only check your like 1 or 2 or 3 files that you changed during the commit for style violations. And then when I'm ready and when I'm ready to push, then it's the point where I really do the massive checks. Then because before push, I can still clean up, I can still do rebases and change my commits. So even if I messed up, that's not that bad. I can still clean it up. But before I'm pushing, I really want to make sure that everything works. So pre-push, I'm running my unit tests. I'm running my PHP stan and stuff like that. And then there's some nice thing. Normally you would have to, if you want to your composer install, every time Git changes something, you would have to use multiple hooks like post merge, post rewrite, and so that there are multiple occasions where Git can change files. And for your convenience, there's a thing that's not a real hook. That's just a Captain Hook hook, and that is called post change. And post change gets triggered whenever Git has changed files. So with a merge, a rebase, or anything like that. So you don't have to duplicate the configuration for post merge, post rewrite, and all that stuff. So you can use the virtual hook post change. And for example, run composer install if composer JSON or composer log has changed. And that's basically what I really like about those hooks there. For me, they're not like a local CI. So the running the tests and all that stuff is nice, but that's not important. I really like it to actually, so I don't have to worry about stuff anymore. And I saw examples where people used it for time tracking. So they defined a format for their commit messages, how they would put the time used or spent for this feature, and Captain Hook would extract it and then talk to the time tracking system of that company and would insert some stuff, and then everything would be handled already. So nobody had to go to the time tracking system anymore. So that was a pretty nice. But there, your options are like limitless. You can do very very crazy stuff with this. And the cool thing is it actually runs on Windows, on macOS, and Linux, because it's just PHP. And if you don't have PHP installed locally, you can even do it in a Docker configuration. So you can execute the hooks inside your Docker container. That still works. So that's quite nice. Yes. So and that's basically all I had. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, thank you for listening.
Great, I really enjoyed that. Thanks very much, Sebastian. Yeah, I see a lot of chat going on as you were going. Some various things. No commit after 4 p.m. Friday would be a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's some good stuff in there. Michael said he's tried Grum PHP, Grumpy. Have you pronounced
Yes.
that? Which sounds similar. What are the differences between that and Captain Hook?
So Grum PHP is actually, the idea behind it was to do a local CI. So every time you commit, run PHP CS, run PHP unit, and all those tools. And at the time I developed Captain Hook, it was not possible to do your own stuff. So you could do the stuff that Grum PHP provided, but that was it. It was quite hard to do your own hooks or use the hooks you already had. So that was basically the reason I developed Captain Hook, and it does so. So as far as I know, Grum PHP still does only commit message and pre-commit and pre-push. And with Captain Hook, you can use all local hooks that are available, like post merge, post rewrite, whatever you want to do. That was not the focus of Grum PHP. It was really some local CI running. But for me, it was more the idea, improve your workflow, improve your Git workflow, like running composer install every time the file changes, and stuff like that. So that's the basic difference, I would say.
Okay. Some discussion on mascots. Grum PHP is the one with the angry builder. I think Captain Hook is that's scary. Yes. I've seen Dan was did a talk for us internally on our thing about Captain Hook. And there was a parrot involved, if I remember correctly. So it sounds like
yes,
there
was
builder versus parrot.
There was a parrot involved. So the thing is, when Captain Hook failed, it actually showed you an ASCII parrot, and so the parrots like said, yeah, something went wrong, but I got some issues on GitHub that the parrot was kind of annoying, so I kind of reworked the output the last 3 weeks or so and made it a little bit more bearable, I would say.
Yeah, go from the fail whale to the fail parrot.
Nice. Yes.
Okay, so Gary says, is there a danger that adding magic via hooks, e.g. composer install, letting devs get away without understanding the process of the project?
Yes, of course. Yeah, I would say. So the more you automate, the more you take away from that people have to know. Hopefully, composer is not that kind of difficult thing, or people are not unaware of it, because I think that it's just such a usual thing to use. But yes, and you still have the problem that people can run Git commits or Git commands without executing hooks. They can, I'm not sure I am allowed to say that, but they can use the -- no verify option, and then no hook will get executed. Even Captain Hook will not get executed, and I can't work around that. So when people are evil, you still have no chance. So they still can work around it if they want to.
Indeed, life finds a way.
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, no code review if your username is Acramius. Nice, Gary. Okay. Have I missed any other questions here? If anybody wants to post in here or unmute? Chris's question. If I want to run a specific test suite based on code change before a commit, will this be possible? If I change user controller to run users?
Yes, but most likely not out of the box, because you would have to make the connection between files changed and what kind of test suite to run. So what you would have to do is you would have to create a custom action and ask the repository what kind of files got changed. That's pretty easy. That's just a method call. And then you have to figure out, okay, then you have to do the mapping on your side and say, okay, if that kind of files get changed, we have to execute that test suite. But that's basically just a system call that you have to do from your PHP action. again, and then you should be fine. But yeah, it's not out of the box, but it's doable with not that much of work, I would say.
Okay, awesome. Just checking Slack for any other questions. And yeah, I think I've got the record for the longest commit message. In my case, I write a lot of long commit messages with paragraphs and a lot of context and things. I think I've got the record for that as things stand. That might change soon. Let's see. Yeah, I'm not seeing any more. If anybody's got any more questions, no, I can get in touch with you on Twitter or somewhere else.
Yeah, of course. Anytime.
Okay, mine usually update. Nice. The best commit I see commit messages something to do with going home. So they just do like one commit at the end of every day and commit whatever they did and break everybody else's build. I think I can say that on a public video. I'll edit it out. It's fine. Any thoughts on squashing PRs as commit messages? Mike says.
I'm not a fan. So, but there's most of the time it's difficult and it's situational, I would say. So if you have like a lot of commits that are like fixed typo, I moved some stuff 50 pixels to the left, moved some stuff 50 pixels to the right, moved some stuff 50 pixels to the left again. Maybe I want to squash them, yes, because I don't need those commits. But if you have if you put the effort in and made sensible commits and said, okay, this was the first thing I did, and this was the second thing, and then this is how the feature progressed, I really like to have those commits. I like to have those.
Yeah, I think I'd probably look at rebasing the branch locally first, doing the cleanup and squashing and the merging, make sure your messages are right. And then, because usually I think I'm right in saying if you squash the commits, let's say on GitHub, it will move all of the squashed commit messages into the body of the new commit. So they still live there, even if you've got 20 whips still there. So I'd say it's probably still worth cleaning them up firsthand, I'd say. Anyway.
Yes. I really like people who clean up before they open pull requests, like rebase, remove unnecessary commits and squash them together and like reorder. So it kind of makes sense to follow how the feature progressed and stuff like that. I really like people who do that.
Okay, before we end up on another, I'll sit here for hours talking about commit messages and branching and everything. So yeah, there's a couple of good videos I can recommend as well. I'll put those in the Slack afterwards as well. I know there's some really good Thoughtbot videos and another on code review and culture and things. I'll push those.
Right.
But yeah, okay. Thanks very much again. That was awesome. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.